Hello, everybody. It is Thursday, March 14th, and I slept through my alarm this morning. That was crazy. So sorry I'm a little late starting the podcast. Um, just kind of going to do a recap and talk about some articles. I know that sometimes I feel like I'm not really engaging or having an interesting conversation, but um, this lady who does a ton of research for me, when I start going through all of her text messages and I think, oh, I gotta let my viewers know about this. So that's what I'm going to do today is kind of catch up on that, talk about the Haitian situation and what's happening down in Florida. And also, so I don't know if any of you outside of the Arizona area had heard about a situation here that a Saudi Arabian company was here growing alfalfa out in the desert. And there was a big uproar about the fact that they were using all of Arizona's water and sending all of the things that they were growing back to Saudi Arabia. And it was on a cheap state land lease. And I mean, it just went on and on and on. And it made everybody furious who read it. And I thought, you know what? I got to look into this. Well, I posted something on Facebook, and a young lady who is a angel daughter, her mom and her godmother were killed on the side of the road on their morning walk by an illegal here in Western Phoenix on the west side of the valley. Her husband happened to comment and send me a podcast regarding this water situation with the Saudi Arabian company. And I listened to it and I thought, I need to have a conversation with this guy. And so we talked, and he really listening to the podcast, number one, and the rancher who was giving the information to the podcast host, I was like, wow, this isn't any kind of stuff that I heard in any article, on any news report, even from the legislators. And it was interesting because when I was running in 2022 and they had like a legislative day down at the Capitol, that we went down there and they were going to show us how a bill works from beginning to end, when it's presented, when you're working on it, how you get it into the speaker and get it on the docket to get in committee hearings, all that stuff. Well, they had brought lobbyists in, and 3/4 of the day was taken up with these lobbyists speaking to us, which this whole process that I'm about to tell you and the things that I found out, it makes me question why people say lobbyists are so bad. But anyway, so I'm at this meeting, this legislative meeting, and there was some lobbyists there for ranchers. And somebody brought up water rights. And so I raised my hand and I said, what about this Saudi Arabian company that's stealing our water here in Arizona? Because that's the way the stories were presented in the news and in the print and on the internet. And of course, one of the lobbyists came over to me and said, we'll discuss this, outside of this event. And I said, okay, but I never heard back from them. And so it just left me going along with the narrative of what the news was putting out there. So anyway, listening to this rancher on this podcast and then having a conversation with Woody, I'm just going to tell you from the perspective of the ranchers, the people surrounding this area where this Fondamonte company had this state land lease and were growing alfalfa, the perspective from the people around them who lived in the community, the perspective of the ranchers, the perspective of the people who were doing the electrical engineering and putting the wells in and watching this company grow. So they went into the desert. Now, mind you, the state lease that was prior to Fondamonte taking over, that company, which was FSI, so Farm Source International, they were growing alfalfa on that property. And so they were using groundwater out in the middle of the desert, on this farm, in Butler Valley here in Arizona, they were using water to grow alfalfa, but there wasn't a big stink about it. And so now the Saudi Arabian company that owns it, there's a big stink. Maybe it's because they're a foreign-based company, but according to the ranchers and the people in the surrounding communities and whatnot, this company are the best stewards of the land they've ever seen. And they are very involved in the communities. They are very involved with the FHA and the 4-H programs. And one of the guys who was putting the wells in was telling me they have the most up-to-date, high-tech water conservation type irrigation systems that they've ever seen in this country. So that speaks volumes. And he said they are the best stewards of the land. They do everything according to the law. They never cut corners. They never try and do something that is shady so that it'll make them more money or just skirt the law in any way. So keep that in mind when we're talking about all this. Better stewards of the land. So they have put like over 13 miles of electrical in to get it all out there to this farm, which wasn't there before. They've put in 17 wells, and know that the guy who was on the podcast and who knows a lot of the Siloam and the Butler Valley area, he said there's like 3,500 feet of water in the underground basin in the area that they're talking about, and said that water will never dry up, ever. So there was complaints. Let me see. I think one of the guys that was complaining, and let me pull it up because I've got it on text messages. I mean, I don't want to blast this guy's name out and number, so I'm just going to read it to you. But nope, it would have been on the other text. I'm going to have to pull up my cell phone. Sorry, folks. But I don't want to get this wrong when I say this to you. So I asked this person that I was talking about, why do you think that this whole firestorm started up about it? And he said, here a while back, they interviewed some old guy that said Fondamonte Wells drained his. And he said his dam well hadn't been used in 25 years probably, and it dried up way before Fondamonte had shown up. The news and the libs sure have a way of spinning things. So this is from an actual person who lives in these farming communities and does electrical engineering and puts wells in, and he knows what he's talking about. So for him to say, and of course the news is going to jump on some story like that of some old guy who says, yeah, my well dried up because that damn company came in here. He may have had a problem with it being a foreign company. He may have decided that he was going to have family move back onto his property and found out his well had dried up. It wasn't because of Fondamonte. It was because his well dried up. That happens here in Arizona. Depends on where it was drilled. Depends how deep it was. There's a lot of factors around that. But anyway, so that kind of, I think, and this guy that I talked to thinks that kind of is what started this. So it's this foreign-based country, not talking about the good of what they were doing out in this agricultural area. So they have put between $35 and $40 million of improvements on this state land that they're leasing. And yes, they got it for a really, it's the going rate of a state land lease out in the middle of the desert. They've spent the money to put the improvements in and make it a workable farm to be able to grow alfalfa. Yes, they grow alfalfa and they send it back to Saudi Arabia. But the interesting part is you get into all of this. So because the state has now canceled the lease and Fondamonte is moving houses and different things off the property, the state has told them to leave all the wells, all that stuff. Well, what happens on a state lease if the state cancels your lease, the state is now going to owe you the money for the improvements. So the state of Arizona now owes them $35 to $40 million for the improvements they did to the property, unless the next person the state leases it to, if they go ahead and lease that land from the state, they will have to pay Fondamonte 35 to 40 million, however much the improvements are for or valued at. So you don't hear about this in the news. You don't understand that there could be a huge setback for the state of Arizona, because what other company do you have that's going to come in to lease that land and right away have to put 35 to 40 million dollars up front to pay the previous leasees for the improvements that they put in? And on top of that, whoever comes in and leases that land is going to be doing the same thing that Fondamonte was. Growing alfalfa, growing some sort of crop, cotton, whatever, and it's going to be using the groundwater. So this is a mismatch of the way that things are reported to us, and things are hidden from us, and we aren't given the true story about a lot of things. I'm finding this out a lot lately. And, I'm the type of person that does a lot of research, and I do deep dives into things. And when I come up with a situation like this and realize that today I feel completely different than I did 2 years ago, sitting there in that legislative meeting, thinking that, these dang Saudi Arabians stealing our water, because I've got much more to tell you of how this is going to affect us. So they're saying, and these are all just approximate figures. I do have another gentleman the guy who was on the podcast being interviewed. I finally got his contact information. So I'm going to be having a conversation with him. And he has a lot, and knows, he is like the information guru in that area about all things water, wells, all that kind of stuff. So, so they grow, Fondamonte grows approximately 350,000 tons of hay a year. And the person that I was talking to says he doesn't know if that's strictly in the Butler Valley. They do have a state land lease in Blythe and another area, but he said it's approximately 350,000 tons of hay that they grow and they send to Saudi Arabia. They also buy an additional 400,000 tons of hay from the United States farmers and send that to Saudi Arabia. So it's about 750,000 tons of hay a year that they send home for their dairy and their beef and their agricultural, their livestock programs. So if they're unable to grow the 350,000 tons that they were growing on this property and send that home, guess what? They have to buy an additional 350,000 tons on top of the 400,000 tons that they buy a year. So they're going to be buying all of it. And there's going to be 350,000 tons less on the open market for American livestock, beef, not only, cattle and dairy, and any other livestock program that they buy that from. Every racetrack in the United States buys hay from Arizona or Southern California because of our growing season. So, but when you've got the Saudi Arabians now entering the market for an additional 350,000 tons of hay, that is going to drive the price up. And it's going to create shortages. And when the price goes up on hay, guess what else the price goes up on? Beef at the store and dairy products. Because now the cost has increased for the ranchers raising beef for slaughter, and the dairy farm owners. The cost of hay has gone up to them because now the Saudi Arabians have entered the market to buy this. Now, they aren't the only foreign country buying this stuff and us exporting it to them. China has been buying it for years and years and years. Japan, different countries that this guy was telling me about. And he said, who do you think? I think he was saying that cotton, let me see. Yeah. Cotton was another big thing that goes to China. I didn't write that down, but I remember having that conversation with him. So the groundwater here in Arizona for agricultural purposes is used for a lot of products that are sent out of this country for. It's just the way that business is done. But profit margins is the biggest thing that these hay producers are going to be looking at. And of course, they're going to go along with it if the Saudi Arabians now enter the market for 350,000 tons more of hay. Of course, the prices are going to go up. Demand's going to go up. Look at what just happened in Texas with the fire in the Panhandle. And hay was coming from all over, from Oklahoma, from southern Texas. That happened when they had that terrible drought. I have a friend who lives over in Texas, and she was saying how hard it is to buy hay and to find it. So, and the prices were outrageous. And beef prices did go up there, and dairy went up there for a while when that was going on. But now this is really going to affect it, and it may not be immediately, but it's going to in the very near future. There's no other way for this to happen than for beef and dairy product prices to be affected, on top of what they already are. So I just wanted to let everybody know, my Arizona listeners know, there's a lot more behind that story with the Saudi Arabians and the alfalfa farm that they had. So I've got some friends in the legislation, and I'm going to give some calls and have some conversations about this. Now, I want to go back to what I was alluding to at the beginning about the lobbyists. So these rancher lobbyists who were at this meeting, they probably have all this information and want to sit down with the legislators and say, look, this is what's going to happen if you guys cut this land lease. The state's now going to owe this company $35 to $40 million in improvements that they put on the property. And they're going to be entering the market to buy additional hay. And it's going to cost the hay to go up, and beef and dairy products to go up. And the next person who does a state land lease, and if they can afford to pay for the improvements, they're going to be doing the same exact thing that Fondamonte was doing, growing alfalfa. So what does it matter who's doing it? What does it really matter? Because if they're not growing it themselves on the farm, they're going to be buying it from farmers who are, from ranchers who are. They're going to be getting it one way or another. But wouldn't it have been a better idea to keep those best stewards of the land these ranchers had seen in place in Butler Valley, and to know that they were supporting the FFA and the 4-H programs there in Butler Valley, and probably the Blythe area, and probably up at Siloam, and to know that they had the best water conservation type irrigation systems put in? They were making sure they weren't wasting. They come from a mindset over in Saudi Arabia from deserts. They know how precious water is. So I don't think this was really well thought out. And my point about lobbyists is maybe it's the legislators and the government who want us to think that the lobbyists are terrible people, because they actually would have been bringing the truth to the legislators. How many of our legislators listened to the rancher lobbyists who went in and maybe had this kind of information, have a conversation with them? I'm so tired of really always trying to have to figure out, how do you get to the truth about anything? It's very, very frustrating. Anyway, I wanted to bring that all up to you guys today, but I do want to go over some of these articles that my research guru has sent me. All right, so I need to get back to StreamYard. I want to share the screen with you. It's going to be share a screen and article day. So, the leader of a Colombian gang, the Satans, that shot up a butcher shop during Reign of Terror across city of Bogota, is arrested in Texas. Venezuelan fugitive was seeking asylum in the United States. So he was from Venezuela. He was captured in New Braunfels, Texas on Tuesday. He is the second leader of the Los Satinas, a gang that operates in Bogota, Colombia, and in January was able to apply for asylum in Texas. The gang is linked to drug trafficking, murder, and extortion in Colombia. So he was taken into custody by federal and local agents in New Braunfels, outside the San Antonio area. But the thing that frightens me about these type of articles is he is the second in command of the Los Satanas and was one of the 7 most wanted murderers in Bogota, Colombia. In addition, he is also facing drug trafficking and extortion charges. He comes less than a week after Los Satanas assassins shot dead a butcher shop owner and an employee in Bogota. So this is another wonderful, heinous, not wonderful, disgusting, heinous, evil gang that is gaining access to the United States. Isn't this fun, folks? This is what the Biden administration allows to come into our country on a daily basis. And let me tell you what, I mean, I don't know how they ended up finding out this is what this guy was from, how they found out he'd already applied for asylum. He was already inside Texas. How did they find out that he didn't belong here? I don't know. But how many of them get across the border like that and they never find out anything about him? Because that's why they cross over. I mean, he was seeking asylum, so he must have come in at a port of entry, unless he applied on that phone app that Mayorkas and Biden have so sneakily put together. And then they can just, come across the border. If they're ever stopped, they show it. But they're not, that's just one of probably 8 evil, disgusting, bloody gangs from these third world countries, from these other countries that are crossing our borders and coming in here. They don't intend to be here and not be who they truly are at heart in America. I mean, just because they crossed a border and they're in America doesn't mean that all of a sudden they're good people and have changed their ways. No, that's in them. That's the way they are. And that's the way they will continue conducting their lives here in the United States. It's just a matter of when, not a matter of if. It's a matter of when and who is the poor, innocent American victims that are going to fall into the hands of these disgusting, evil gangs. So let me see this one. All right. I want you to hear this, Sheriff. I'm going to put it back to the beginning.
Hi, good morning, and I appreciate you being here. You know about the case, you have the probable cause. So this morning, I'm just here to deliver a message. And the message is, don't think for a minute that what happens at the Mexican border doesn't affect us here. Here you have 3 illegals that should have never been in this country that have committed a very serious crime, kidnapping and sexual battery of a lady. They shouldn't be here. This is the same thing that we saw where the student was killed by the person that was here illegally. That's why we pay.
That was in Palm Beach. So, in talking with sheriffs, I mean, I had Sheriff Daniels on Tuesday, and I've had Sheriff Mark Lamb on the show. And they are the last line of defense, the sheriffs and the deputies in this country. But local law enforcement, sheriff's departments, all of those ones, they're really taking up the slack and the heat that the Border Patrol and ICE are no longer even participating in, because all Border Patrol is a welcoming committee. And all ICE is doing is sitting on their hands because they're not allowed to go out into the communities and start arresting the over million, it numbers over 1 million of convicted illegal criminal felons who have been given deportation orders to be removed from our country. There's over 1 million of them, folks, roaming our country that have already been ordered to be deported. And this administration, this crappy administration that we have, who is absolutely slapping Americans in their face, will not allow the ICE officials to uphold their oath to protect Americans, to do the job that they were hired to do, and deport these criminals, these felons. They won't allow them to do their job. So we're just going to have more and more of this type of news. It's going to be more stories about young girls like Laken Riley. It's just going to, young children who are being raped and killed, elderly women who are being raped and killed, robbed, hit and runs. The stories are just going to increase. And this is not what I wanted to see happen when I founded Angel Moms and Angel Families. I mean, I've been a victim of this type of crime. But I never, ever, ever, ever wanted to see the members of my group grow. Never, ever. I wanted it to just stay where we were at and not have to add another member or talk to another grieving mother or father or a sister or brother or aunt and an uncle and hear the grief in their voice and know that it's fresh and know what they're going through. And that was one thing that I will say about President Trump. Even though he had never experienced that kind of loss, the sincerity that we felt from him when we were with him was real. He understood the pain, he understood the problem, and he wanted to shed light on it. He gave us a voice. The Biden administration doesn't even want to admit that we exist. And it makes me so mad every time that Biden is on the news that when he talks about his son dying. Well, what about Brandon Mendoza? And what about Brandon Michael down in Florida? And what about, Brian Terry, Border Patrol agent who was killed in the Fast and the Furious, the guns that Hillary and Obama and all them hold, and they were all involved in getting the guns down to the cartel. So many more Americans have been killed. What about all those people? But this president doesn't want to hear our stories. He doesn't want to look in our eyes and see our pain, but he wants to stand in front of a camera on national, international TV and wants you to see the pain in his eyes. Well, we're just about sick and tired of you not wanting to even acknowledge that our children existed and what we've had to deal with and what all these new victims' families are having to deal with. This is the article that so in Palm Beach and what the sheriff was talking about there, 3 undocumented immigrants arrested after woman sexually battered. So they forced a woman into a vehicle and sexually battered her at 2 locations. The Palm Beach County Sheriff's Office said on Tuesday. So they're just brazen. They just think that they can grab women, throw them in a van and have sex with them and throw them back out onto the street. Let's see. An illegal immigrant. Here's a great one. An illegal immigrant who was deported twice is charged with assaulting girls at a Maryland church. So let's see. An illegal migrant, let's just say it as it is. An illegal alien from El Salvador who has been twice deported from the U.S. this week was charged with more than 20 counts of sex abuse and sex offenses of minors during his first time working as a church teacher in Maryland. Dear God. So the incidents took place between 2016 and 18 at the Durwood Church. But this is just being reported March of this year. I was thinking maybe it was an older article she sent me. The victims were aged between 6 and 12 at the time. He's also been charged with rape in the second degree and two counts of sex offense, third degree in relations to the incidents. They took place at the church, and the police began the investigation, this past May of 2023, after a victim came forward. So following the initial complaint, 3 more victims came forward in September of 23 and then January of 24. So that's why this is so late in hitting the news and this guy being arrested. But here we go again, twice deported by ICE, back in the country and committing more crimes. They're never going to stop committing crimes because they're just given a slap on the wrist. They're not really shown real punishment. They're not, and when they're deported, they don't care. They know they can come back over the border tomorrow. Just get to the border in Arizona. It's just barbed wire, 4 strands of barbed wire. Easy to get back in. Who cares if they deport us? And they'll come in under a different name. Here's a good one. Got to share this one with you. It's just unbelievable. You know, when you get into not the mainstream media, and this is what I appreciate so much about this woman who assists me in doing the research. She gets into, and I mean, some of them are from Breitbart and different things, but she gets into some of the local type articles that you would never see on national TV. So Biden's State Department gave a tourist visa to a Brazilian who had been accused of child rape. So they gave a B2 tourist visa to a Brazilian fugitive accused of raping a child and who later was wanted by authorities. But he was allowed to enter the United States. He's 40 years old. This was in March of 22. He was allowed to enter the United States on a tourist visa awarded to him by the State Department. But by June 2022, Brazilian authorities began searching for him for charges that he allegedly raped a child under 14 in Brazil. After overstaying his visa by remaining in the U.S. for more than a year, the Brazilian national became an illegal alien fugitive residing in the U.S. And in fiscal year 2022, nearly 854,000 foreign nationals became illegal aliens after overstaying their visas. So that's on top of the 854,000, so almost 1 million is on top of the amount of people that they talk about that's come over the border through ports of entry and those that have not come over through the ports of entry. So the numbers just keep getting bigger and bigger and bigger, right? There is a lot of crime. And there was one right here in Arizona, Shaylee, and she was dating a Russian guy, and they were college-age kids. She was dating a Russian guy, and he had overstayed his visa, and they were engaged to get married, and she decided she didn't want to marry him because he was a little, I don't know, angry, kind of mean. I don't know. So they broke up, and she had a restraining order against him, I believe, but he ended up coming into her apartment and waiting until she got home from work or school and ended up shooting her, killing her, murdering her. And that was here in Mesa, Tempe, but beautiful young woman, a Russian student who overstayed his visa. You've got Fernando Bercerto down in Tucson. His grandparents live down there, and they're part of the Angel Family, Angel Mom organization. Young, handsome young man who had a promising future was murdered by an illegal alien. Criminal. This happens far too often. And the mothers and the grandmothers and the aunts and the uncles and the sisters and the brothers that I know of the victims who are part of our organization, you know, it's pretty sad because a lot of these children had very promising futures. They were going places. They were making a difference in their communities. And it's just sad. Grant Ronnebeck was point blank assassinated at a QT shop here in Mesa. The guy came in and asked for cigarettes. He was getting them. He dumped a jar of chain on the counter, and he wasn't counting it fast enough. So the guy just whipped out a pistol and shot him in the forehead, and then walked over his body and grabbed some more cigarettes. And come to find out, that guy had already kidnapped a woman, held her hostage in his house, and put drugs in her, raped her, tied her up, kept her naked like for 2 weeks or something. He already was charged with that crime, but he was out on the streets waiting for a hearing, and then ended up assassinating Grant Ronnebeck. Fernando Basurto was such a young man. I'm sorry, Laura, I don't remember his age. If you put it in the comments, I'll mention it on the show. But he was, I think he was about 14 or 15 years old. But it's just really, really sad. And let me see if I can go to my desktop and grab a picture, because I do have some pictures of the Angel family victims on my desktop here. But maybe if I show a couple, it'll mean more to you, because you actually see the pictures. And yeah, I don't have them here on my hold on a second. One more try. Sorry, it's on my other computer. I have them on my other computer that I don't do my podcast from, so I apologize. But anyway, maybe next time. Oh, he was 18 years old, Laura says. So he was 18 years old. And graduated from high school, and he had his whole life ahead of him. And he was shot and killed by an illegal criminal. This just isn't fair. I mean, Laura has been devastated over this. His grandmother, just devastated over it. I've met her several times, and his grandfather, but there's only so much we can say to people, and we say it in such a heartfelt, warning type of a way, because we've experienced this grief and this loss, and we just don't want to see other people do this. And Laura even mentioned, she said, she didn't want to be a part of that club. There's her grandson right here in this picture. She didn't want to be a part of the Angel Family Club. Who would? We're the only club that we don't want new members. We don't want membership growing at all. And we really don't. I want to grab a couple other articles, because there's a couple of them I had read earlier this morning. Oh, this is the one. Oh, my gosh, this is so disgusting. It's just scary that there's people like this in this world, quite honestly. So the FBI and border agents arrest an alleged Mexican assassin with a violent reputation. Michelle Angelica Panada was wanted in Mexico for her involvement in several murders. Anyway, she was known, and I don't know if this will talk about it.
I don't trust the guy. Whatever he says is meaningless. America is about action.
Yeah, that isn't. Let me see if she's got the actual article, because some of these you have to be, Fox News, you have to have memberships with all that, and I don't. But this woman who they caught, she was like this murderous gang member there in Mexico, and she would cut up the people. I don't know, she'd kill them first or just start hacking their body apart. She would rip their hearts out of their bodies, and she would actually place the hearts at religious statues there in the Mexican city where she lived in. It was a disgusting article to read, and to think that she was here in the United States, had even gotten over the border, was frightening enough. But Yeah, that's that one. I mean, these articles just get more and more disgusting and frightening. Ugh. A Duluth witch doctor sentenced to life for raping woman during a cleansing ritual. A self-described witch doctor will spend the rest of his life in prison after police say he raped and sexually assaulted a woman during a supposed ritual. The jury found 45-year-old Hassan Salgin guilty of rape, false imprisonment, theft by deception, battery, and sexual assault. So he met, the victim met him at his apartment on Peachtree Industrial Boulevard and paid him a $200 deposit with more installment payments promised over 30 days. So when the victim got to the apartment, she told police she noticed a handgun sitting on the table, and he told her the ritual would take 3 hours and gave her a white nightgown. Anyway, yeah, and he's an illegal. I don't know what country he's from. Anyway, to think that these types of people are showing up in the United States and just walking over the border, and these articles are only about the ones that they catch, and that they may. Let me see. Yeah, so now suspected terrorists are using fake IDs to enter the U.S. illegally. Known or suspected terrorists using fake IDs to enter the U.S. They're used in processing, then for air travel, vetting hindered by communication, no relationship with home countries. This was another thing that I found pretty interesting. Channel 15 News, which is a local news station here in Arizona, they had this big sob story on the other day. They were down in southern Arizona, and they actually visited an area in California where a lot of these people are coming over now that Texas has kind of been shut off. But they were doing like this sob piece, and I know the report of this young man, and it really made me mad. Oh, the plight of these people, and they're filing for asylum, and these people behind me are filling out paperwork. They're fleeing violence, and we're getting them on these buses, and they're going to be taken up to Sky Harbor, and they're going to have an airline ticket to wherever they want to go. And I responded and I said, quit doing these sob stories about these illegals claiming false asylum. Why don't you report on the American struggles? Why don't you report on what this invasion is doing to our communities, to our schools, to our medical systems? What it's doing to the American taxpayer? What it's doing to further destroy the economy in the United States? When these people are only coming here to earn tax-free, under-the-table money because Americans hire them more readily because they can pay them half of what minimum wage is and just pay them under the table. Then these illegals don't pay taxes, and then they send home about 3/4 of what they're making. So it's going to total about $774 billion that's leaving our economy. Why don't these reporters do stories on what's really happening to our country because of this invasion? No, it's just easier to go down and talk about a sob story. I was at an event last night talking to people as a candidate and really had some great interaction with people afterwards. And I was talking to this group of young men, and I said, do you know which country is one of the safest countries in the world right now? And one of them spoke up and said El Salvador. And I said, you're paying attention. So the El Salvadorian president has come in. He has, wiped out MS-13, put them all in jail. A bunch of the MS-13 gang members, left the country in droves because they didn't want to be imprisoned. And those prisons over there that he's got going on are not very nice, and they're very high security. But it's one of the safest countries in the world right now. And so I was telling these young men, so do you know what this means when somebody shows up at the border and they're from El Salvador? And they say they're claiming asylum, and they're like, no, what? And I said, they're MS-13 gang members. Because if you weren't a gang member, you'd want to go back to one of the safest countries in the world, which is where you're from. The job opportunities, the things that are happening there are insane. And this is what good leadership does. And this is why we need President Trump back in the White House. Because he understood illegal immigration and how it affected A, B, C, D, E, F, G. You know, the schools, the medical, the welfare systems, the list goes on and on and on. Our economy, number one. But it just, it doesn't take a rocket scientist to figure out. And Border Patrol should be able to figure this out, because why would they want to go back to El Salvador? Why would they want to come here with the amount of crime that's happening here with all these gang members arriving from everywhere? I don't know if any of you saw this article. So a lady from Venezuela is accused in Missouri. So she is accused of killing 12-year-old Travis Noble. Now, this woman is here illegally from Venezuela. I think she was drunk. She has one count of driving without a driver's license. I thought she had her 2 children in the vehicle when she allegedly caused a head-on collision with the Wolf family. She was driving 75 miles an hour despite the speed limit being 40. So she ran head-on into the car that was carrying Travis and his parents. And they showed a picture here of him in the hospital before he died. That poor young child. His parents are still in very, very serious condition in the hospital. But here this Venezuelan woman is with her 2 kids in the car, mind you, and going 75 miles an hour in a 40-mile-an-hour zone. Do they not know how to read speed signs? Do they not? This is a big thing about them even having a driver's license, some of the states that give them to them. They can't even read road signs that try and keep people safe on the road. But so now, she's come to this country. She's ruined the life of a family, stolen the son of these parents. And who knows if the parents were pretty seriously injured too. One or both of them could die. But if they survive, they're going to have to live the rest of their lives with this tragedy ingrained in their memory forever. I mean, they were involved in it with their son. And this is why there needs to be some sort of law for the capability of people who are affected, like Travis's parents and angel moms and angel dads and angel families, to be able to sue the government or the elected officials, and especially in sanctuary policy cities and states and counties. We need to be able to sue them if they have arrested an illegal criminal for committing a crime and let them back out onto the streets and didn't hold them till they had a hearing before a judge. They need to be able to get sued. They made those sanctuary policies, and I doubt that it was with the voters' approval in their cities, counties, and states. The officials just make the decision to do this. The same with any police department who upholds sanctuary policies. It may not be a sanctuary city, but the mayor and the city council can direct the police departments to act in a sanctuary policy manner and protect illegal criminals. It doesn't need voter approval. So yes, there needs to be a way for American citizens who've been affected by illegal alien crime to be able to sue the officials and the people who have put these policies in place. It's the only way we're going to be able to nip it in the bud when these people start getting hit hard in their pocket, and it may not be city money. It may be able to sue them personally, because who are you, Mr. Mayor? You weren't acting in an official capacity because you didn't have voter approval to approve these sanctuary policies you put into place. We've got to start holding these officials accountable for the crappy policies they're doing and the crappy job that they're doing protecting American citizens. All right, so I'm sure all of you have heard. I'm going to go over real quick. So this thing that's happening in Haiti, so they assassinated the previous president, and then this guy has stepped up, and now he's just resigned because these gangs are just getting unbelievable. But more than 4,600 Haitian migrants have been sent back to Haiti on 43 repatriation flights, repatriation flights since I have a hard time saying some words. Since September 19th, while some migrants have been permitted to stay in the country. And according to Mayorkas, about 10,000 or so, 12,000 migrants have been released. That means Haitians have been released into the United States. People in Haiti today are regularly subjected to gang violence and kidnapping, political instability, and natural disasters. Tens of thousands of people are still internally displaced from the 2010 earthquake, and successive droughts, trade disruptions, and inflation since then have worsened food insecurity. So, gosh, do you remember that lady named Hillary Clinton who had all that money donated to the Clinton Foundation to go down to Haiti and help after that earthquake in 2010? Do you remember the millions and billions of dollars that she got? I read an article the other day where only 3 houses were built out of that money. 3. So they went down there in the middle of the news cycle and went down there probably to kidnap children. And then they vacated the country, because what have you heard about any of the rebuilding and the rebuilding of the infrastructure and anything there in Haiti in the last few years? Nothing. And the attention that wasn't given to that situation. Look, I understand why people would be uprising the way they are in Haiti. You know, going this long without the proper infrastructure you need to live, and not having the ways and means to grow the food and have the food to feed your population. And then to have these gangs come in and want to take over the country. You know, I get that there's stuff going on. Supposedly, there's a military fraction from Kenya that is supposed to be going into, oh my goodness, we'll run out of time. Supposed to be going into Haiti to help. And the United States is supposed to be giving, of course, over $10 million to help with this situation down there. But the best thing to do for those people is to go down there and help with restoring peace and getting the infrastructure back up. That's a better way to spend money than it is to allow all of these people just to come home $51 billion of American taxpayer money supporting them when they're just here as bloodsuckers. You know, they're just here to take money, send it home, and then eventually go back home. They're not here for the good of the United States. But the Haitian situation, I really feel like we need to go down there. There is a huge difference in the cultures from Haiti to the United States. There's a huge difference in the cultures in a lot of countries that these people have come from that are coming here. And when you have a country of immigrants and they don't assimilate, you can expect nothing but chaos and problems. There will never be an understanding between people. And these people aren't forced to, you know, take classes and understand you need to assimilate to our laws and the ways that this country runs. So, you know, we got a tough road ahead of us, people, but I don't want any of you to ever give up the fight. We've got to stay strong. We have to stay focused. And I hope that you all have a wonderful weekend. Thank you for joining me today. And I am off to get things done around the house. Take care.